All right, y'all, one moment. So what we're gonna have to do, let's see what happened here. I don't know, for some reason, Facebook is just going around in circles. So I'm going to to YouTube now. All right, we are on YouTube. If we can put some kind of tag on Facebook, let's see.
We can share the YouTube link on Facebook.
Okay. All right.
You want to maybe just put a post on your page right quick?
Yeah, I'm doing that now.
Okay.
Where are you on YouTube? Are you on Mount Zion or?
Try YouTube Mount Zion.
Mount Zion, Pittsburgh.
Mount Zion, Pittsburgh.
I'm sharing it now too.
And then we'll post it back up on Facebook again. I'll do that later. All right. Well, we are on YouTube, and we do have a section here that will allow us to hear and receive comments. So right there to the side, we want to thank you all who have joined us again for COVID-19 Clergy Conversations Unscripted. This is our second go round. We want to thank each of you who were part of this conversation on last Thursday. We've invited some guests. We got a few people who are, you see Pastor Hunter down there. That's not how he really looks. That's makeup and all of that that's on him. He won't just come on here real. He got to have his post up shot. But anyway, we want to welcome to this conversation tonight Pastor Horatio Jones. You see him post up on his picture. There he is right there. And then we have Faith by the Bay.
Yay.
Isha, soul sister number one. Glad to have you a part of this conversation.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask, and we're hoping to have another guest, Bishop Clark, if you will kind of introduce us to kind of give us some information on our guest that we're waiting to get on the line. And if we're not able to get him, we will definitely try to get him again. But in the meantime, I'm going to let you kind of navigate a little bit with some of the section that we asked you to kind of handle.
All right. Yeah, we are waiting currently now on Dr. Jeffrey Watson, who runs the health clinic there in North Oakland, doing a phenomenal job in a half a years. He's going to come on tonight and give us some insight and info about COVID-19. I went yesterday and got tested, so we'll talk about all of that in the midst of a conversation, because there's going to be a challenge that goes out tonight to all of my pastors, all of my partners that are pastors. I'm challenging y'all tonight. Testing is something we got to do. So I'm excited about the show.
I accept.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Hunter. Thank you, Pastor Hunter. Is there another? Can I get another witness?
Well, now, Bishop Clark, hold on. You know, Pastor Hunter may be thinking you talking about that little game called Doctor.
Oh man, I wasn't good at that operation.
Operation, that was named up. We talking about getting the real COVID-19 test, but we're all down. I'm down with it as well.
And thank you, Bishop, for leading the way.
Oh man, bless you, bro. Bless you. Thank you for the encouragement.
And hopefully, if we get
thank God for you,
Dr. Watson on, you can kind of share some of that whole experience.
Yes.
We're also glad to have with us Pastor Horatio Jones. What is it? Bible? No, it's not Bible Fellowship. Family Bible Church Fellowship. Yeah.
Family Bible Fellowship.
We're certainly glad to have you on. And I'm going to ask Pastor Hunter to kind of lead the way in this conversation with him. and kind of tell us some of what Pastor Jones has been doing and how it will fit into this conversation we're having tonight.
Thank you. Pastor Horatio Jones is a great gift to the body of Christ. Um, I think I met him years ago when Olivet used to fellowship with him with Bishop Humphrey was alive, and we would go down there when Bishop Trotter was there and was preaching. But he was doing something a few months ago, a while ago, and I saw him on Facebook, and it just blessed me. He was talking about mental health in the church, and we know that we deal with mental health in the church. And I reached out to him to find out how he could come to Olivet with his team. And immediately he got right back to me, and he brought his team to Olivet, Oakland. And we spent a whole Saturday talking about mental health in the church. And it was such a blessing to our church that I've been telling everyone about it. And I'm so honored. Pastor Rachel Jones and his team is so knowledgeable about this subject. And so I want to introduce him tonight. He'll definitely be a blessing to you tonight, and honored to have him and Pastor Horatio Jones.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I'm honored and excited to be with everyone here. When Pastor Bates and Bishop Clark shared with me, I think it was late last week or early this week. I wasn't able to participate live last week in view. I really wanted to, but I was able to go back and take a look. And when I saw what you guys were discussing and the leadership and the initiative that you're taking as pastors in the Bay, I was quite surprised when I got the call and honored. So really looking forward to continuing the dialogue and the discussion as it relates to the effects of this COVID-19, not just within our faith community, but within the greater community at large, particularly as it relates to the mental well-being, mental health of the African American community. So thanks for having me.
Pastor Jones, being that we're in COVID-19, many people in the church are in SIP, shelter in place. I've talked to members of my church, asked them how they're feeling, and I have many people that have been dealing with anxiety and depression, especially those that don't have a lot of family, and families are in shelter in place. And I believe that while we're in this and when we come out of it, is going to be such a need for the church to deal with mental health issues, and those that struggle with mental health issues and have to be confined in the house or can't touch and just a lot of different issues. And so if you would just speak to that concerning mental health in the church and how it's necessary for the church to begin to embrace mental health and to talk about it.
Well, there are really two areas where when we talk about specifically shelter in place. I'm doing a series. The overarching title is the spiritual shelter in place. But there are two areas that our mental health friendly communities team we really focus on. And as it relates to this shelter in place, and there are two areas that kind of get exasperated. Mental health within our community, within our society as a whole, is a common reality. Statistics show and reveal that it's self-reporting, about 1 in 4 individuals live with a mental health diagnosis. And one of the challenges that we face within the church is that we tend to over spiritualize, trivialize, or demonize those who are living with mental health challenges. And then, so in one area, when you're dealing with this shelter place, it exasperates what already is a major need within our faith, within our community, within our faith community. The other area I would like to see us discuss probably in a future one that is exasperated, that isn't talked about as well, is the issue of domestic violence. And so when it comes to everything about a shelter in place, it's like antithetical. First, everything at the core of the reality of being the body of Christ. It's about, connecting. Paul talked about that we're all members, and the metaphor that he uses, is our body, how every member is connected, and to fully function, it has to be connected and have that sense of providing support and being supported. When you look at and we deal with the issue of behavioral health, being in isolation and then being disconnected from our faith community, from our community as a whole, and in our faith community, it exacerbates the reality and the sense of isolation, desperation, potential hopelessness. And so, what we teach the mental health friendly communities is how something that we call spiritual and social inclusion, where individuals, oftentimes, when they're dealing with mental health challenges within the church, they see it differently, antithetical. They see it, when it comes to physical health, diabetes, cancer, blood pressure. Those are instances within our lives that we want the church to be there for us. We want our family to be there for us. We readily and we freely share prayer needs and where we are and what our situation is, and we want that sense of connection. However, because of stigma, misinformation, over spiritualization, trivialization, and demonization within the church, when people are dealing with that reality, they tend to isolate themselves. And what we focus on and what we work with in some of your churches is how to become a mental health friendly community, because the first place that people run to is, according to research, is their faith community. But the challenge within their faith community, because of those three responses, trivialization, spiritualization, and demonization, oftentimes they find themselves isolated even more. And so our goal is, how can we create that welcoming community within the church? Now that becomes even more challenging, because now they're physically disconnected, not seeing one another, not hearing from one another, and now they're isolated within their homes. And sometimes, because of stigma, discrimination, isolation within their homes, they can go further into their illness and have even more of a need for that connection. And so one of the challenges for us within the church is how to be connected when we're not connected. How can we like we have a video, a Zoom conference. We had one about a few weeks ago, responding to the state of emergency within our community from a spiritual and mental health perspective, ICU. How can we create intimacy for the eye, compassion for the see, and a level of understanding when we're separated physically? So although we're separated, what we call, I think it was Kamala Harris on CNN, she said it's important for us, although we're dealing with social distancing, that we're not emotionally, and for us, spiritually and relationally distancing ourselves. So the question for all of us pastors and those who may be watching is, how can we create that type of intimacy and understanding and communication in an era, not just now, but also, I don't think there will ever be a post-COVID, but as we transition from where we are now to whatever the new normal is, how can we create that sense of community, belonging, love, and acceptance within our faith communities, in our community at large, for those who are living with mental health challenges?
Wow. I would ask a question. Somebody was going to say something?
No, go ahead, Pastor.
What would you say to a pastor that, thinking about attacking mental health or dealing with it in the church, or some members that might want to talk to their pastor about it? How would you say one pastor would begin to have the conversation? For me, I just saw it and my spirit said this is something we need to deal with, because for me, I think all of us have some mental health problems sometimes, some issues.
The reality from pastoring, my wife did a study for our church years ago for leaders, women in our church, and I cannot recall the author of the book, but the title of it was "Leading with a Limp."
Leading with a
a limp, leading with a limp, you know, when Jacob's hip socket was touched by the angel. And the premise of the book is you really can't lead in the body of Christ. We don't lead from a position of strength. We lead from a position of weakness. It is Christ when physically he was at his weakest point. A lot of folk don't recognize or don't realize that Jesus battled with mental illness. And so one of them, I don't want to preach here, but just quickly.
Too late for that, Doc.
Yeah, you're on the runway. You're on the runway. You got clearance.
You know those dreadful hours. You know, Christ when he went from the Last Supper and then he transitioned into the Mount of Olives and then in the inner corridors of that to the Garden of Gethsemane. When he was with those three, the Bible says that he shared with those three that he was deeply distressed. And you know, Dr. Bates is on, so I think textually correct. That the term that was used there was he basically was at a state of emotional shock because he was about to experience something that he had never experienced before, and he was at a moment of physical weakness that he had never experienced. And the text literally says he collapsed. You know, one gospel writer says that he just, you know, like he fell on his face, but the word literally means he just collapsed. And as he collapsed, we see it at its deepest level when he had suffered hematidrosis, when the blood came out of his pores. That's a physical reaction to deep and extreme emotional depression. And Christ, that's why we are able to come to him regardless of our emotional or physical state, because he's been there. So one way for as a pastor is for us, what I love about scripture, the reason why we can turn to scripture regardless to the circumstances of the situation is because we see all profiles. We see all aspects of the person. From David, you know, because if the Lord had asked David what to include, it would have been Goliath, it would have been bear or lion, it would have been all of his triumphs. It would not have been his failures. It would not have been his sorrow. But we are able to go to him and relate to him because we see all facets. You name the leader, we see the flaws. And so one, in response to your question, Pastor, is for us to acknowledge our own frailty. Because the truth be told, all of us deal with some form, and I mean us, I mean on this platform here, deal with some form of mental illness. Just from a physiological perspective, because of how we preach and minister, we are crisis managers, and we don't have counselors. We don't have therapists. We keep going. And that's why historically we take Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays off, because physically our body. So one is for us to acknowledge our need, and we're seeing it even more so now, of pastors just succumbing to suicide. There was one in Southern California who was very public with his battle with depression, and he and his wife actually led a ministry that dealt with mental health. And then during the month of suicide prevention and awareness, which is September, took his life. And we're seeing it's common, it's more, and those are what we consider the extreme. But I remember there was an occasion, give me an example. I'm a preacher, so I'm long-winded. So I need somebody to let me know when I need to transition.
All right, just before you get into that, because I want that example. You mentioned about us not, having therapists and things of that nature. And I think it may be a high time, perhaps past time, that during this season, where though there is plenty work, there's plenty downtime, that we seek out. I've been in therapy, perhaps for the last 15 years of my life, and I'm a strong component of it. But I think it may be in this time, and Bates, this is that unscripted part, right, where we challenge pastors and leaders to get therapy, because there's a whole lot of stuff. Because the truth of the matter is, whatever in you is going to come out of you. Right. And so then in our preaching, I think it was Bishop Jakes had a series one time entitled Leading While Bleeding. And I think that is so important. But holding that thought, Dr. Jones, I want to, Denisha, if you can speak to quickly how what Pastor Jones has said about the mental health piece, but then the social justice activism that you have done and how important that is right in the midst of this COVID. So we've got to make sure that's the ICU Pastor Jones talked about. How now does that social justice piece come in? How does that social justice piece fit in right along through here? Because I think part of the psychic problem is how we are treated unjustly beyond the walls of the church.
Very, very true. And there's so much about justice that dovetails with mental health because as everyone has read, seen, the DJJ, who's largely responsible, the governor announced that he was looking to close juvenile justice facilities. And so if we are going to close facilities that have incarcerated and housed young people who have been mistreated or not treated at all, and addressed with their mental health challenges and receive the necessary support, and we just institutionalize them. Now is going to be the time that we have to create more wraparound services. This is the justice side of it. We have to push and advocate and demand more support services so that those young people who will be home in our communities, in their homes, struggling with the things that they're struggling with, that they have the right outlets. And so this is going to be a prime opportunity for us to be letter writing, calling, being very present and vocal about making sure that money trickles down to our communities so we could serve them properly for young girls and young boys, but also the parents. Some of the stuff is gone generations and never been addressed. And there's some unresolved pain, and that shows up in a lot of ways. But Bishop, you bring up a really good point about your transparency about being in going to therapy for such a long time. I'm noticing that there's more people that are advocates of justice who are finally admitting, look, I do all this justice fighting and I'm arguing and I'm fighting and I'm screaming and I come home and I don't know how to come down from that. And so there's starting to be more programs for them as well to create balance. Because when you're fighting for justice all the time, sometimes you don't know that the people who love you are saying good things. You're so used to fighting that somebody has to say, wait a minute, this isn't against you. This is for you. And it's hard to hear that sometimes.
Wow. Pastor Jones, I wanted Denisha to get that part in, even your example you were about to make.
I'm going to refer back, to that in a moment, but it's, there in one of our trainings, a Bridge Over Troubled Waters, we deal with the spiritual development or the spiritual journey of African Americans from slave ships through the White House. And we talk about the history from slavery, Jim Crow, slavery, abolition, Jim Crow, civil rights, new Jim Crow, war on drugs, through Obama to the era of Trump. And we talk about how trauma has affected the mental well-being of our community.
Mm-hmm.
And what you were just sharing there when it comes to community trauma, there was a study done a number of years ago on the effects of trauma on the development of the brain. There's a field of study called trauma-informed care. And it was with some mice. And they exposed the mice, adult mice, to a pleasant smell. It was like a cherry almond fragrance. But when they exposed them to the cherry almond fragrance, they zapped them, they shocked them. And then, of course, they shook. They did that for a period of time. And then when they exposed them to the fragrance, they didn't zap them, but they still shook. Then those mice had pups. And then they exposed those pups to the fragrance of the almond cherries. When the pups smelt it, they shook.
Mm-hmm.
Then those mice became adults and they had pups. When those pups smelled it, they shook. And it showed how down through generations, and we know from a biblical perspective, it talks about 3 generations. How trauma, when it is unaddressed, passes from one generation to the next. And when we're looking at these young children, we have to recognize that historically, even how we have responded, our community has been exposed to the cherry blossom and the shock at the same time. And when we deal with social injustice, such as with the murder of the young man the other day, what is it?
Ahmaud Arbery.
Syndrome is,
Ahmaud Arbery.
Hello?
Ahmaud Arbery.
what's her name?
Ahmaud
I'll text it to you
Arbery.
again.
Breonna
So
Taylor.
Dr. Joy DeGruy, she wrote a book called She does a whole seminar on
Dr. Joy. Yeah.
syndrome, not post, but it's current. So it's not an issue of the past, but when it continues to occur today, it agitates that wound again. And so when you're dealing with post and the treatment for post, a person, when they have a trigger, it takes them back to the past. But when we see what's happening within our culture, then it's not a past, it's a present. So when it comes to the issue, and I'm going to get back, Bishop, to Christ and us and the need for pastors. But when you deal with an issue there from a community perspective, historically, the role of the church has never been just the by and by. It has always been to confront injustices within our community. However, one of the challenges facing the African American church today is what I would call the collateral damage of desegregation. The collateral damage of desegregation was Black businesses. The collateral damage of desegregation was the Negro League. The collateral damage, so likewise, the church in some instances have abandoned our connection historically to our role to confront the injustice and to provide comfort and empowerment. So therefore, to respond to this segment of the community, I'm going to forward to all of you. I just got an email today. Some of you probably got it too. Probation chief is having a listening session. They're allocating some funds to work specifically with the faith community. The meeting is next week. We have to go back to our roots and to provide the type of support, advocacy, policy change, and confrontation so that these young people who are now coming, and it's happening with adults too, are coming back into our community so that the church would then have relevancy as it relates to empowering and providing a sense of direction for them. Now, back to what I was mentioning before in reference to pastors needing therapy. In that same scenario in the scripture when Jesus was with his disciples, the only time Jesus was vulnerable, I won't say he was never vulnerable or transparent, let me put it. The only time Jesus shared his pain with his disciples was in the garden. He said, I just need y'all to pray for me. I need y'all to keep watch, and I need you to pray. And what did they do? They fell asleep. And one of the challenges for us as pastors, and what I think why in many instances, I love the topic you guys had for this call, is it too soon? Is it too soon? For many of us, we use Sunday for our therapy. I'm going to say that again.
You're right.
So one of the reasons why we wrestle with not having church is, you know how it is, Bishop, if you've been seeing a therapist for 15 years.
Yes, sir.
Part of that's a part of, you've assimilated that into your life.
Yes, sir.
Those sessions affects everything.
Yeah.
So for us as pastors, I mean, the hugging, the kissing, the embracing, that verbal affirmation of the sermons, because we live out our weaknesses through our preaching. And now our therapist isn't there.
Right.
Wait, Doc. Did you just say that verbal affirmation?
Yeah. We're like comedians, right?
We missed the verbal affirmation.
Right.
We missed the verbal affirmation, Doc. I appreciate that, man.
And you know what, Bishop Clark and the rest of you, if we're honest, right? If we're honest, that's really the thing that got a lot of fellas kind of tripped out about not being able to gather
And sisters, yeah.
And sister, but you know, looking at a screen
Yeah.
and you hear an amen or talk to come on now. Or you on the runway and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You
I
gotta,
like the way you put it, Doc. That's verbal affirmation. I'm appreciative of that.
You miss verbal affirmation, right?
yeah, you gotta envision your audience.
Right.
You know, and that's why some of us sneaking people in, so we can just
because you need somebody to talk to. That's right.
because that's they're our therapists.
Yeah.
But like a comedian doesn't do comedy without an audience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And
I asked a question maybe a week or two ago. Maybe it's been 3 or 4 weeks now. And the question was really, do we have an unhealthy attachment to the pulpit? Because I knew that there was something we were wrestling with, right?
Oh, wow.
If you are on the job and you might serve at a different level, if you're bivocational, if you serve at a different level on your job, but on Sunday, you are king. Do you miss Sunday because you don't like what you do Monday through Friday and Sunday makes you feel better? And that was a hard question for folks. And I wasn't trying to, down anybody or make anyone feel bad, but we've done something and we've made the pulpit beyond just sermons, but it becomes a security blanket in a way. And so I like that we're talking about the mental health side of this. And there is some therapeutic stuff that comes with the pulpit. It's a safety blanket.
Well, I tell you, I'm appreciative. I'm appreciative to Pastor Rachel Jones, and I'm appreciative to Clark. But Clark don't know this. I remember when he started going to therapy, or I remember when he talked about it publicly. And when I got to that place where I needed to go, I wasn't ashamed. I didn't care about what nobody thought. I knew I needed some help, and I got a great therapist. It helped me through a lot of stuff, and it helped me after I had my accident. And
it's hard work, though. It's hard work.
Yeah, it's hard work. Oh yeah, but it helped me, especially when I went through my the accident that I had, and just dealing with life and struggle and family stuff, and just it's been a great help. So it was a blessing to hear that it was okay for a pastor to go to therapy.
Amen.
Right.
Hey, let's bring some of the other brothers in. It's more than just a few of us. We got Bishop Barnes and Pastor Chris Williams, and there's Pastor Zach. He was at the moon, and you know how that goes. That galaxy.
Still there. He hasn't come all the way back down yet.
Yeah.
Horatio!
what's up, Zach?
And Doc, your sound, Zach, is horrible. Your sound, man, you can't be using little kids' speaker system. But let's hear from Bishop Barnes and the Williams. Any questions, any comments you all want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, well, when Denise, when she was talking about the social justice part, man, and even Pastor Horatio talking about it, man, I thought that was really good, because I think that's one of the things that we as a church, as a ministry, oftentimes, myself and maybe others, that we're not involved in as we should, And when we think about that, we think about the young man that was killed, that was murdered. He was 25 years old, man, jogging. You know what I mean? Stop looking to a house that's under construction, and the father and son decide that we're going to kill him. You know what I mean? I mean, those kind of things, man. And that really hurt me, because, watch this, that could have been my son, or it could have been your son. Could have been any of our sons, man. And I think that we're going to have to get back to that area of social justice. I'm glad that now they had 3 different prosecutors that was trying to do this to these guys that killed them, the father and son. But they recused themselves. They didn't want to be bothered with it. And then they finally got a sister, and she's going to be the prosecutor. You know what I mean? And so I think that that's going to be good, because of the fact that we need some justice right there. And when it happened back there, somebody said, well, it didn't happen in Oakland. Doesn't matter whether it happened in Oakland or not, man. Injustice somewhere is injustice everywhere. And so we got to do what we can. So I think that that social justice piece is going to be very important. And I think that that's something else that we should all, add to our ministry.
And I can only imagine at 25, what is the trauma?
25.
What is the trauma that he held, that he was carrying, if we're able to now, you're seeing all these released videos of him and police interaction in multiple instances, and oh my gosh, he was arrested at some other point. So what happens if a young Black man's only experience is being stopped, having a gun pointed at him, being accused of something, and they hear he's trying to run to clear his head or just trying to be healthy? Like, what are our other young men also dealing with who are stopped frequently? They live to tell it, but there's some trauma that these young men are holding on to and don't have the strength to let it go.
But the sad thing about it, Nisha, is that all of us on this line have had that trauma. It is something that Black men in America carry with themselves every day. I mean, all of us on this line can tell you stories about incidents with police. I can give you one example. They came into my house, guns drawn, without knocking, without a warrant, looking for someone else, mistaken identity.
Wow.
And if I had done the wrong thing, I would have been dead in that moment, never to tell the story. But that's the issue with America. I was telling some of the fellas, we went to Europe last summer, and that's the first time I've ever been free. I wasn't the number one suspect. I was telling Chris this. We were in, where were we at? London together. We were having this conversation like, this is the first time I've ever felt like I wasn't the number one suspect. So can you imagine, and we're older now, can you imagine the kind of oppression that the young brothers are under on a daily basis since we've lived through this already?
I had a young brother tell me Sunday, he mentioned, he says, Bishop, he said, man, this is messed up. And I proceeded to ask him, what you talking about, bro? He said, man, even in a pandemic, we ain't safe. Even in the midst with the world being shut down, we are still not safe. And then you tie that into what Dr. Jones said about the trauma. And we have to live with that. It's serious, man. It is serious. COVID is bringing out the truth of this country more than any time before.
Oh, God. I want to dive into two pools because I think there is some invisible dialogue that we're not having in a lot of circles where it's kind of slipped through the radar. In that, as we talk about this social justice piece, is one of the first times in modern history that we've seen the justification of a young Black man walking around with a mask on. And so now you have this issue of young Black men who would normally you tell me I can walk around and go into a bank with a mask. And so you're dealing with the element of young men that would be engaged in heinous crimes, but then you're also dealing with the opposite end of the spectrum with young Black men who that's not within their character, but yet they're walking around with masks on, and they're automatically are going to be stigmatized. Because again, here's another reason for me to stop or to harass another young Black man with a mask. I can just say, oh, I thought it was somebody else, or I thought it looked like this. And so it's putting our young Black men in dangerous positions. But then I'll also lend some to the conversation that Pastor Jones began. I think it's so important that we have this dialogue about mental health, because you have to understand that it was already challenging. It was the burden and the stress of what we do pre-COVID-19. And so you can imagine now what it's going to be like, what it's like during, and what it's going to be like post. We've not seen the fallout or the mental effects that this thing is going to have on guys that will think they're going to go back to their churches and everything is going to be the same, and they'll be in for a rude awakening because things are going to be drastically different. And that's going to hit them so hard that there's going to be major fallout, and many of them won't get that mental or emotional piece attended.
There are millions of
I think part of what's going to happen, Chris, is going to really make us move outside the walls of the church. Right. Somebody, I remember having conversations with some preachers and some pastors in Oakland, and they was like, Zach, how come you you're always doing stuff outside of the church. And I think it's a mindset. I think it's a mindset to do the kind of work, missionary work, as we call it. We don't think pastors should be connected to doing missionary work, which is, something for someone who's designated to do missionaries. But Paul did both. So I think we come to the church and we think it's our job just to sit in the church and wait for the people to come to us. But this is going to give us another perspective going forward, that we're going to have to do most of our ministry outside in the next few years, even if the church is almost the same, which we know it's not going to be. And so I think it was easy for me to have that transition or that mindset when I became a pastor, that I had to continue to do the work outside of the church, because before my father ever became a pastor, that's all we did was missionary work. We had missionaries in Liberia, missionaries in Haiti. We did prison ministry. Horatio knows this. We did block parties. We did all of this stuff outside of the church, which made it an easy transition to do social justice work for the last 15 or 20 years. So It's like we have to have a mindset to say that the church is not just about preaching on Sunday morning. It's preaching every day of the week, wherever you are. That's another thing that we're gonna have to. I agree. We're gonna have to really focus in on what kind of work are we gonna do moving forward, so that the community will stop talking about the church is not relevant. Yeah, we're relevant. We never went anywhere, and we're essential. But we can be essential and still not gathered.
All right, he done turned the corner on us, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I said this morning in an interview that Pastor Bates and I were on KDYA, and Pastor Bishop Barnes as well, that the church is not being persecuted, as some would say, because of the locking of the buildings. That's not persecution. Mm-hmm. But the church is under pressure. And we're under pressure to do ministry in ways that's more in keeping with the biblical mandate than ever before. So now, not being in the building, we've got to learn how to worship. We've got to learn how to share the word and learn to continue to do the work. So when we talk about, you guys, this issue of mental health, though some would think the conversation is limited just to the building, now tonight we're focusing on the body. That's because the issue with the mind is so crucial in these times. I'm praying, brothers and sisters, and this is, man, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, that during this time, we don't have pastors committing suicide.
Yes, sir.
If they were committing suicide before COVID, can you imagine the pressure? And I like what Denisha said, unhealthy attachment to the pulpit. What does a fella feel like when he can't get up in the morning, or a sister can't get up in the morning to go to what we know as the sacred desk? And that's all you've done for years. Mm-hmm. This is good conversation.
That's mind blowing right there, brother. That's mind blowing right there. You know what I mean? Because I tell you, when I first went back and I was preaching, and we could only have 8 people in there, and I'm looking around, I'm going, Lord have mercy. You know what I'm saying? Because of the fact that it was hard to get adjusted to that. I mean, I came home, I kid you not, and this is my first time saying this. I came home, man, and I was crying. I was crying because I was so accustomed to, you know what I mean? People talking back to you and all that other kind of stuff. So it's a mind-blowing thing. It really is.
Yeah, yes, sir. One of the, from the African-American perspective, our perspective, church is more than church. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Culture perspective. And then especially in this era of gentrification. Yeah. So I remember one time I was over it with Bishop Payton in West Oakland. I'm driving up to the church. I see people walking down the street, walking chihuahuas.
What is a chihuahua?
I mean, they walking. Was it like little white poodles?
Oh, okay. I got identification. Okay, I got you.
You got shot at the liquor store, man. They walking chihuahua. I said, man, this ain't the community. I said, gentrification, you got art districts, and you got. So what happens is the church
was everything from within when during slavery and on the plantation, our sense of identity, empowerment, everything. A lot of folk don't remember. You know how when we're in church, and now they say we can't touch, right? You know where prayer circles come from? Literally holding hands. That comes from the plantation. You will
Yeah.
not see that in other cultural groups. They don't join hands like that. That comes from when after the Nat Turner revolt, and the slaves were not allowed to gather and to meet privately. So what they would do, and that's where balconies come in churches, back
Right.
areas in the churches.
That's right.
So what they would do in the still of the night, they would go out into the into the woods, and they would join hands and pray quietly. Everything, and then when you're talking about the emergence after slavery and reconstruction and deconstruction and so and now when you're in gentrification,
He froze.
our
We
folk
there.
our folk are living in, I don't live in Alameda County. I live out here in San Joaquin County. Zach up there living in the hills somewhere.
Yeah.
And y'all living in Contra Costa County, and
Wow.
people driving into our churches. Our kids are maybe one or two in a classroom.
Yeah.
In many, the only place for cultural affirmation in our culture today is the church. And so when the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, the plumbers, the one place where they can come, and then that's why I have no issue with Sunday morning being the most segregated hour, because the culture that's usually oppressed in what y'all call multicultural,
talk, sir. Yes, sir.
Is the minority culture, in order to not offend the majority culture, because the majority culture does not know what it's like to be a minority. That's a whole other thing.
Now, the views that are expressed by Horatio Jones are not necessarily the views of.
And so
Bishop.
Yes, sir.
Horatio.
What you felt,
all right, come on, man.
Our people are feeling, because they deal with all forms of oppression and racism in the workplace. And now we see it lived out in the disproportionate numbers of COVID-19. The one respite is the church. So now we got members weeping at home because they're not able to. So just from a physical, just walking in a grocery store and seeing someone with a mask on does something to your brain. We can't compute. Our brain has, not being able, and you then exponentially the impact within our community is how to be there when you're not there. And so it affects our mental well-being. And what I was going to mention before about Jesus, so when he shares with them, they fall asleep. He got to deal with this all by himself. So our people are in isolation. And whatever
but I think
we've had are now going unaddressed.
But I also think, Horatio, is that most of us are avoiding the conversation about the new reality, right? This is the new reality. So I was preaching a couple of Sundays ago, and I was talking to people about, we got to learn how to lean into the situation instead of avoiding the situation, instead of avoiding the conversation. We got to learn how to adapt where we are. And I feel like you, Barnes, the first Sunday I got to church, it was a shock, right?
Yeah.
But then I came home and I looked at how many people were watching online, and I said, "Oh, wait a minute, this is new. I'm starting to like this." And I think, Horatio, what I was trying to say is that some of those cultural norms that we've been living with for a while, I really stopped shaking hands over a decade ago.
See, but what I mean by that, it's not the shaking of the hands, it's the connection.
It's the connection.
It's like my brain, like our kids were texting. So they'll text and they don't realize there's a portion of the brain that only develops when you hear a person. There's a portion of the brain that only develops when you see. You remember that guy that was doing sign language with Obama? South Africa, and then they found out the dude was It was I don't know what he was doing. He was just, and what I learned, one of our members is a leading person in American Sign Language. She said, Pastor, that's a whole nother culture. She said they communicate with their face. So their punctuation and their syntax is in the face. It's not just, so there's an aspect, our culture is even more dependent upon that connection for our social and emotional development. So what happens, this is where God gave me a phrase that says, learn how to use the isolation, but don't get used to the isolation. Because what will happen is there's an aspect of discipling that only happens through connection. What's going to happen with a lot of our people, now they see church as entertainment. They watch church. They watch services. Our cultural norm is not watching, it's involvement in. So in our culture, you ever heard that comedian, the white guy, Owens is his last name. I think he's married.
Yeah, Gary Owens.
And he talked about the first time he went to a black church. They talking to the preacher, like, what you talking? He thought they were being rude. Right. That's our culture. We have to have that culturally. That's how we connect. So that's why.
But contrary to what, but on top of what you're saying, I agree with you in one aspect. I agree that that's me and your culture. That's our generational culture. But I also think that this new generation is more comfortable with the way they receive in church at this particular moment, because let the truth be told, the country has made a shift, and they've made a shift to more digital platforms, more so than they have watching coming to church on Sunday morning. And this has been happening for maybe the last 10 years or 15 years, when people have been watching church services all over the country. Now, older people might not do it, but the younger people, and we could tell because the numbers in the pews have started to diminish over the last decade. The numbers are not the same because people have been staying at home watching online services. So whether we've caught up or not, this is something that has been taking place, whether we want to deal with it or not.
Yeah, let me ask this question.
Let me mention this real quick. But what I'm saying is, when I talk about the collateral damage of
right,
because kids in that millennial generation through TikTok and so on, there is an aspect of their development that is being forfeited.
Excuse me.
And we have to learn how. And our challenge is now not doing away with, but how do you incorporate it? Right. Like my boys, they FaceTime, they Snapchat, they do. So how do we incorporate that with the context of this new normal that you refer? So I don't see it as an either or, but a both and. But we don't want to forfeit like Black Wall Street. Right. Because of desegregation.
But can I also throw in here just that all of that is really built for everything that we knew pre-COVID, right? But let's be honest, there's some people who enjoy watching online also because gas and choosing where to go is a real situation for them. They have to make a conscious choice about where they are going and how. And there's something about what people are experiencing. If millions of Californians have not received unemployment, those folks are sitting in your congregations. And so it's not just this technology driven community or generation. There's people who are struggling, who are on your deacon board, who are on your usher board, and are too ashamed to admit it because they appear as if all is well. And if you can't afford to put $10 in your gas tank to show up for service, you really clapping for watching on Sunday.
Yeah. Pastor Bates.
I was going to say, I think that we have to be open to what may seem to be trending with young adults, but our church is pretty much a young adult church. And I've noticed that those young adults that I've discipled and to help them to develop and to grow, they use social media, but it's not a crutch to them. They still value being connected. They can't wait to see each other. They can't wait to when we are able to corporately declare the worth of our God. So, there's probably some more conversation we need to have on this. One thing about this too, y'all, we don't want to go all night. We try to be within an hour's time. And I'm going to ask Bishop Clark to share something else to kind of bring us on in. But we'll continue this conversation. Also, let me say this real quick. We will upload this to Facebook.
Yeah.
It'll just be, we're pre-recorded, and maybe I cut out some things here, and so we'll try to correct it next week, and hopefully some people will set their alarm clocks. I ain't calling no names out. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. Bishop Clark.
Whatever, you gave me the wrong ID also.
Yeah, but that ain't had nothing to do with, that had nothing to do with being 45 minutes late. Wrong ID or not.
It took me that long to figure out it was the wrong number.
And then don't have no dress on your picture thing. Go ahead, Bishop.
Let's close out tonight with everybody answering this question. And Pastor Chris Williams, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Barnes, then we'll go to Hunter, then Zach, then Dr. Jones, then Denisha, and then we'll close with you, Bates. Can y'all remember that? All right, we good church folk. So what I want to do, this is the question I want you guys to answer, and we'll close with Pastor Bates having the last comments. Based upon what we've heard tonight, the need for gathering is both psychological, spiritual, and social. With that being the case, and that's undeniable, I don't think any of us will deny that when we come together, it helps us mentally, it helps us, spiritually, and then it helps us socially. With that being the case, we all agree that it's not time to open based upon the state of the pandemic. What do you tell a leader? And again, everybody, to answer, who says, I need to be back in the building for those reasons: psychological, spiritual, and social. But I'm not going because it's not healthy. What word would you say to encourage him or her when his faith gets weak and he's wearied and wanting to make a move? Because what I've discovered tonight, brothers and sisters, is that maybe the desire for some people to want to get back is not that they don't care about people's health, but it's because they're aware of the deficiency that's happening to them. And with good assumption, think that's the same thing happened with people. So what would you share with a pastor, Pastor Chris Williams?
I would reinforce something that I think you said, and that we would put love above anything and everything. I think that it's important that we're not so, internalized within what we want, that we sacrifice them for what we want. Because the reality of it is we could be putting ourselves at a greater disservice if we don't, count the cost now and rush back into it, thinking that it'll satisfy a need now, but the need will be greater later if a mistake is made.
Powerful. Bishop Bourne?
Yeah, I would say to that brother or that lady, pastor, I would tell them that what we should do is just wait. Wait and wait, but not just wait, but wait with expectation. You follow what I'm saying? Look forward to it. You follow what I'm saying? Rather than just sit back looking forward to what God is going to do and how he's going to do it. You know what I mean? And be excited about it, man. Wait and expect to be excited about it. And I think God will take care of it.
Pastor Hunter?
I would tell that pastor, that person, to spend this time reflecting and preparing for the next chapter. That's what I've been doing, spending that time, because I've been that pastor that after the first couple of Sundays, just went off and just sat on the couch and just looked, just stared into space. Like, boy, I can't really believe that we're here. So, but now I'm in that place where I'm just allowing God to stretch me and reflect and just prepare for what God is doing.
All right, Pastor Zach.
It's good, man.
Wow. So I'm the only one on here tonight married to a doctor. So I'm just going to tell you that ain't happening, because my wife wasn't letting it happen. So she was like, when they said 75 people, we can gather with 75 people. She was like, nope, it's over. It's over. We're not having church no more. And I had to let her make that call, because if you got professional people around you that have more understanding about the situation, I leaned into the situation. I just said, okay, let's do this. And from that day forward, we've been, doing online services and still doing the work that we do in the community. But I thank God for having someone around me in my life that could help me navigate through this period of time. And I do want to say this. I want to say this to the brothers. I get therapy every night, because, even when I don't want it. I'm getting therapy when I don't want it. I'm getting therapy when I don't want it.
Who's the therapist?
Constantly. She's talking constantly. I want to scream some days, Bishop Clay. But
it's gonna be on Facebook, boy.
Right.
Hey,
You're in trouble.
I'm not scared. You see, I wouldn't have said it if I was scared. I'm not scared. But the truth be told, I would tell a brother to lean into this moment and to prepare for what we knew before. We knew what was going on before COVID-19. We need to trust God in the aftermath of COVID-19, because really, brothers, this is when our faith is really going to take control, because we're getting ready to walk into the unknown.
Yeah.
And so, Pastor Jones, I'm sorry, Pastor Zach. Will you finish, sir?
Yeah, if I wasn't, you cut me off. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Pastor Jones.
It's listening to everyone, and I was reflecting back on ministry. I've pastored. The Lord has had us pastoring. Zach was mentioning, I remember his dad and his mom and block parties, and when I was with Willie Smith in Oakland and Pilgrim Rest, and all these years, 30-something years of ministry, I was mindful of, I was reading earlier today about a priest, I think in Georgetown, and he had served communion it was a communion Sunday, and then he tested positive for COVID-19, and they quarantined. They shut down the church. This is before the shelter in place, and they quarantined I think 180 or 200 members. And for the first time in 100 and some years, they didn't have church service. And Dr. Zach's wife, this is a medical situation. This is a medical situation. And what I don't do, I don't give medical advice. We have to listen to the experts when it comes to medical. And so
amen, Horatio.
We have, it's a medical. If it was a behavioral health, I listen to them. If it's a medical, this is a medical emergency that affects all of those areas. And so for me, it's pastor, for me, man, we got to be still. Just be still and know that he is God.
He coughed.
That the sheep belong to him. The sheep belong to him. We exist as shepherds because of them.
Yeah.
That's why somebody will pastor after FBF when I'm gone. All of us are on a transition. Moses was never going to leave forever. He places shepherds because he loves the sheep. He didn't ask Peter, do you love the sheep? He said, do you love me? And I'm placing you. So we have to trust God that he loves his sheep. And then we've got to acknowledge, with economists and others acknowledge, we don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know what this is going to look like. And so we have to just be still, trust God, entrust his sheep to him, and literally he's just revealing the next step, the next step, the next step. And we have to trust. So that mind is just be still. We don't know how to do that. Trust, we don't know how to do that, but we're learning it. All of us are learning this experientially as we go. And don't rush this thing when it comes to it. Ain't about the gathering, it's about the shepherding.
Right.
Sister Denisha.
I want to definitely say thank you for allowing me to join y'all. You know, party is, I know Pastor Jackie always says this. She said it for years and I love it. You know, the party is always fun when you bring a girl. And so thank you for letting me
Don't say that too loud, Denisha. Don't say it too loud.
But so there was a conversation I had with Pastor Ambrose Carroll, and he was talking about the beauty of stillness and taking this time to really acknowledge the beauty of stillness. And there is a scripture that I've been really just deep diving in for a little minute, because as soon as this happened, I was like, you know, I'm trying to look for a little bit of something to hold on to make me to give me a little bit more reassurance. And so as somebody who my day job ain't my day job, I'm waiting for my unemployment check. That I got approved for food stamps, and I'm struggling for the first time in my life, not with where I am financially, but struggling with having been the person on the other side of the table, case managing others and helping people get resources. It was a mind shift for me to be like, am I really about to go up in here and shop and buy some eggs and stuff with this card? Like, you know, it was something else that so I'm being absolutely honest when I say there are people that are going to be sitting in your pews that always look like they have it together, but this changed the landscape for folks. And to be sitting and waiting for unemployment since March, there's some folks that y'all that are closer to us than we know, that are not willing to admit that that bank account is looking a little different, and if some other automatic stuff come out, it's going to be a negative. How do we go back to church the way that we did and do church the way that we've always done it if we're preaching to a congregation afraid to admit that the bank account is negative, the credit cards are maxed out, and they've been living on what they thought was a temporary reserve, but now you're, you know, in week 10 and you don't know when money is going to show up and when your job is going to say come back. But that Noah text, like that Genesis, Noah sending out the raven and sending out the dove, that thing is doing something to me and it's working for me. And I think that for folks, for pastors, and I appreciate those that have called me and we've been able to talk through this. I think that there's provision and wisdom and strategy in how you go back. And I think Noah is the example. He sent the raven and the dove, and he could have surely just said, we getting off the ark. But there was wisdom in sending the raven. It was wisdom in sending the dove and sending them multiple times to see if they were coming back before you knew it was safe to go out. So be encouraged.
Amen.
Pastor Bates?
Yes, sir. You know, after just listening to our sister, and I remember your question.
You don't listen to nobody.
You know, that you go back to sleep, old man. He didn't had the bridge on here. He didn't have.
You know this is public, right?
I know. That's how we do unscripted. This the unscripted part. You done seen Zach in a dress, so don't even trip. So I'm not going to even answer the question. I think everybody has answered it well, but this is what I am going to say. Our sister Denisha here, thank you so much for being on with us.
Yeah.
And, you know, Pastor Chris Williams texts me what I was thinking.
Text all of us.
And all of us, okay. And guess what? From these brothers here, we're going to be a blessing to you. We need your Cash App, and
right.
Yeah, we're going to bless you. We all agreement, brother?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But wait a minute, can I interject there, Bates?
Yes, sir.
I just got to say this to Denisha. Back in the day when we were all from the hood, where we from, it's an old adage that says a closed mouth don't get fed. And I think a lot of people need to know that it's okay to ask for some help.
Yeah. Well, I just want you to know we got you.
We got you.
We got you. Okay.
I appreciate her ministry. I Appreciate
Yeah.
appreciate her always trying to make sure that the clergy is in the know, that the church is in the know, that we're not left out of conversations and we're not left out of things that the city is doing. I appreciate it.
Amen.
Danisha, could you give your page and stuff again?
Sure. Folks who follow faithinthebay.com and on all the social media is Faith in the Bay. And trust me, like I really, because Bishop Clark knows this about me. I'd be like, no, I'm good. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. So he know if he would have asked me, I would have been like, no, I'm good. And so my sharing that is because there are folks that I'm meeting on a regular basis, and my transparency is allowing them to be more transparent because never in life has this been a norm, and we're all in a new normal. And I think that there are more folks like me that are serving and are unsure. Well, not necessarily unsure, but just admitting that things are like, wait a minute, I always had a little piece of a job, you know?
Right.
And so
all right. Hey, you kind of stuttering out.
I think the person I've known the longest on here, Pastor Chris. Okay. Pastor Chris and me go way, way, way back to when we
like 4 flat tires. So let me say this. We got to bring this to a close. I'll probably have to edit some out. I want to keep this within an hour. Well, they may give us a few more extra moments. So we will be back on next week. We're going to try to make sure that we have the Facebook live stream going where we on that platform as opposed to YouTube. And we want to thank you all who were on YouTube who joined us. We had intended to entertain some of the questions that you have and all of that. And we have about 28 people watching. So we want to thank all 28 of you for watching us tonight. And stay alert. We'll be on with this very same conversation on Facebook a little later this evening.
Pastor, could I mention one thing? You know, as Nisha was sharing, it just really stressed the need for connection and the casualty, because I was thinking in my mind, my spirit, how can we embrace when we can't touch? How can we embrace? Because I'm speaking that metaphorically, because that the church is that we not just, how can we in an era, in a time of social distancing, how can we embrace when we can't touch? Because that need is in every area, because this is touching everyone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you guys so much for joining. Shouts out to all of my brothers. Thank you so much, Pastor Horatio Jones and Danisha, for sharing with us tonight in our conversation around COVID unscripted. Thank you so much, pastors. I have been a student tonight, y'all. I have learned, I have gleaned, and I'm appreciative of it. I never thought to look at that time of fellowship, because what we describe when we talk about psychological, spiritual, and social, that's fellowship. That's what they did in the early church, and not being able to go to the building so that we can have fellowship has definitely been impactful. So thank you, brothers, for teaching me tonight. That's Bates on you, bro.
All right, we are out. Thank you for viewing. God bless each of you. Until next
let's get
week.
that cash out, man.
Yes.
Cash out.
Let me bring off. You want to put it on Facebook? Give it to us.
I'm sending it to Pastor Chris. It's me, Danisha, but I'm sending it to Pastor Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, and Pastor Chris, you just ship it out to everybody, man.
We'll get it to you right.
And Danisha.